Welcome back to Parental Alienation and Narcissism by J. Claude McDaniel. This program is to help you heal and navigate through the hardships associated with narcissistic alienation. Please like and subscribe.
Welcome to episode 20. My name is J. Claude McDaniel, author and victim of alienation. I share my experiences, education, and provide valuable information that I hope will help you navigate through your plight. This episode is opinion-based narrative if you should find yourself in need to protect your peace. In Part A we'll discuss learning to breathe again. Part B of building a future beyond the pain. For years, Alex measured time differently than most people. Not by holidays, not by seasons, not by family milestones, but by court dates, mediation sessions, attorney meetings, custody exchanges, and the next challenge waiting around the corner. Then one morning something felt different. There was no hearing scheduled, no legal documents waiting for review, no angry email demanding a response, no looming deadline, just sunlight streaming through the window and a quiet house. At first, the silence felt uncomfortable. For so long, conflict had occupied every corner of his life that peace itself seemed unfamiliar. He found himself asking a question many targeted parents eventually face. Who am I when the battle is over? For years, Alex had defined himself through the conflict. He was the parent fighting for access, the parent defending against accusations, the parent trying to hold on to relationships that seemed to be slipping away. But now he faced something new. The opportunity to rebuild. One of the first lessons he learned was that healing begins with honesty. He had to acknowledge what had been lost, the birthdays he missed, the family traditions that disappeared, the conversations that never happened, the milestones he watched from a distance, the years that could never be returned. For a long time he resisted grieving. He believed that grief meant giving up. But eventually he discovered something important. Grief is not surrender. Grief is acceptance. It is recognizing reality while choosing to continue forward. So Alex allowed himself to feel the sadness. Not forever. Not every day. But enough to release the burden he had carried for years. And as that burden began to lift, he rediscovered parts of himself that had been neglected. The hobbies he once enjoyed. The places he used to visit. The friendships that survived the turmoil. The simple pleasures that had been pushed aside while conflict consumed his attention. He picked up his guitar again. He spent afternoons exploring trails he once loved. He reconnected with old friends who had quietly remained supportive. Little by little, Alex remembered something important. He was more than a custody case. More than a court file. More than a targeted parent. He was still a person. Still someone capable of joy. Still someone capable of building a meaningful life. The conflict had shaped part of his story, but it did not have to define the rest of it. And that realization marked the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter focused not on surviving, but on living. In the next part B of this episode, we'll explore how to build a future beyond the pain. Part B, Building a Future Beyond the Pain. As Alex continued rebuilding his life, he realized something that once seemed impossible. Peace requires protection. Not from courtrooms. Not from legal battles. But from the habits and emotional patterns that conflict leaves behind. Even after the legal process ended, occasional attempts to pull him back into old arguments still appeared. A provocative message. A rumor passed through mutual acquaintances. A new accusation designed to reopen old wounds. Years earlier Alex would have reacted immediately. Now he responded differently. He had learned the value of boundaries. Communication remained brief and focused. Unnecessary conflict was ignored. Emotional bait was left untouched. For the first time in many years, he understood that protecting his peace was not weakness. It was wisdom. Alex also learned that healing is rarely a solo journey. He sought support from people who understood. Friends. Support groups. Professionals familiar with family trauma and recovery. Not because he was broken, but because healing often happens more effectively when shared with others who understand the road you're walking. As the years passed, Alex discovered another important truth. He could continue loving his children without allowing their absence to define every part of his life. This was perhaps the hardest lesson of all. For a long time he had lived in a constant state of waiting. Waiting for a phone call. Waiting for an email. Waiting for an apology. Waiting for reconciliation. Eventually he realized that waiting had become its own kind of prison. So he made a decision. He would leave the door open. But he would stop standing in the doorway. He would continue loving his children. But he would also continue living. Building friendships. Creating memories. Pursuing interests. Finding purpose. Experiencing joy. Hope remained. But hope no longer controlled him. Instead, it became something quieter. A steady belief that truth often survives longer than manipulation. That time sometimes reveals what conflict conceals. And that relationships, even damaged ones, occasionally find unexpected paths toward healing. Then one ordinary morning years later, as Alex stood in his kitchen holding a cup of coffee, his phone vibrated. A message appeared. A number he had not seen in years. One simple word. Hi. In that moment, Alex understood something profound. Whatever happened next, he had already succeeded. Not because he won a legal battle. Not because he proved someone wrong. But because he had refused to lose himself. The conflict had not destroyed his character. The bitterness had not consumed his heart. And the pain had not prevented him from becoming the person he wanted to be. The lesson from this episode is simple. Protecting your peace is not about forgetting the past. It is about refusing to allow the past to control your future. You survived. You endured. You learned. And now you have the opportunity to build something new. A future rooted not in anger or regret, but in strength, wisdom, purpose, and hope. Because while alienation may take years from your life, it does not have to take the rest of your life. That choice remains yours. And that may be the greatest victory of all. This ends episode 20 of my podcast. In episode 21 we'll explore navigating custody conditions. Thank you for reviewing my podcast and listening to this episode. Please like, subscribe, and comment. It helps this valuable site to grow and spread sound child behaviors and alienation information. Sincere thanks, J. Claude McDaniel.